and you do anything to get that one more hour. And some of us live life never even thinking about that because we take it for granted. And I hope today that we do something that kind of rattles you and shakes you at the core of who you are and what you believe and why you're here. And I'm going to say this again later, but we're not promised tomorrow. And every moment that you have, you can make it a gift. And I just like thinking about that because I think too often we run, right? We're just running and running and running. And it begs the question, like, when are we going to slow down and just look right in front of us? The people that we have, people that we love, and just slow down and realize that we're not promised tomorrow. And you know what? When you feel that way and you believe that, it's not easy, but I want you to stand up and grab hold of it and make the tough changes. Make the difficult decisions. Because that perspective will change your whole entire life. It will enrich your relationships. It will enrich your day-to-day stuff that you do. But it starts with having this. When Mark sings those words, it starts by allowing those to penetrate your very soul. And then into your mind, and then hopefully into your actions. This week we talked about community. And can we put up Acts 2, Will? When you get a chance? There's a scripture that we've spent the last couple of weeks talking about, but we took different angles on it. And I encouraged us as a church to spend some time thinking about these verses. And so, they devoted themselves to the apostle. That's the first one. I want us to just stay here for a couple of minutes because I wanted to see what you thought about this. And the reason being, it will transition into what I want to talk about today. But if we don't get this part of it, then I don't know that we'll ever see it. It could just be the slide itself. We're experiencing technical difficulties. It's all right. So I'm just going to read it to us. It says, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. I told you, like, this is the picture. It's called the Acts 2 church. And this was the model of church that Jesus put forth through his disciples that he felt would change the world forever and ever. And that's why we still have it today. But there's things in here that I find extremely challenging. Obviously, it was in their culture, and they had to figure it out. But the principles are the same here and today. So what does it look like? And I just wanted you to share with me a couple of questions. Do I have a question on there, Will? I think there's 3 questions. What do these verses mean to you? What does it look like today? What do you see as issues we face today to make this a reality? The floor is yours. I'm just going to throw the mic before I get there. You can choose any of those questions, or in your own reflection time on it. This is the value of community. And I said community, the authentic community, is messy.
Well, the way I see the third question is everybody works. I like the old days when I was home all day and then you were home around the weekends. Everybody works and everybody's so busy. I was picturing the third situation on Sundays when people are home, most people are home and not working. so to get together with friends and family, but so many people are doing soccer, doing this, doing that, so because of the business of life, we can't sit and gather and enjoy each other the way it used to be. So it's something to work at if we can.
I agree. Just our own lifestyles.
So I think the third question, when you look at it, what do you see as issues we face today? Obviously, it's personal to everyone. Everyone has different issues with that. So for me, the biggest thing would be, I think we had discussed this, but being the giver or being the receiver, you know, of people's grace or whatever. There's a pride issue involved, you know. So that's, especially in our society that preaches so much like self-reliance and independence, it goes directly against relying on anyone. Or, you know, you always want to be the bigger person. You want to be the giver. It's extremely hard to be the receiver, you know. So that's an issue I see in our society today.
That's a great point, and I think that's where we got to spend a lot of our time figuring that out.
You drew the, from then to now, you know, as you just stated at the end there, I don't know exactly how you said it, but my brain's going 100 miles an hour, so I'll get out what I can. The verse that you used, the verses there, we should, in my opinion, all see ourselves. That's us. It's talking to us today. So if that is in fact us, I would think everyone has that idea. Like, all right, we're reading the Bible, the Word of God. And it brought me back to we just went over the Lord's Prayer. And I think I spoke with you about how I got caught up right at the beginning, Our Father. So for those of us in this room who are able to grab that, Our Father, and stop there and go, okay, if Our Father spoke right now from over my left shoulder in a voice that I recognized as my dad.
The letter to the Romans.
Oh, sorry. And he spoke about the letter to the Romans.
He spoke right now. The word of God come alive. You know, where it comes as you walk out of church, you don't really play out a lot of things, but that was choreographed. Pretty darn well.
So what would happen? What would happen is we would all turn and we would all hear it as our Father's voice. Each one of us that are believers would hear that. So venturing to guess, if there was someone here that is not a believer as of yet, they might not turn their head to that. But we that do turn our heads, this applies to us. And we live in this fellowship. And this is what it's described as, is what it should look like when Christ speaks to us. It should touch us in that way. So, and then the relationship, and I'll just stop it after this, would grow out of if one of us went astray and someone from the group saw them and go, you'd be able to tap them on the shoulder and go, remember what Dad said. And bring them back into the fold. And this is how, so this is why we come and sit before you, because you're interpreting or you're presenting us this is what our Father said. How are you doing with it? Who's not in the yard today? Who is it? You know, we go back for the one. We look for it, you know, and you keep in fellowship. And I was thinking that coming in today, I have a place to go on a Sunday morning. I have the opportunity, which I don't always have on Sunday. And this is what I'm coming for.
Yeah,
Be
good.
accountable and living.
There's a lot there, Wayne, and
I know.
I appreciate
There's more.
that a lot. No, because that's what I want, because I told you I want us to teach one another, and when I hear you share that, I'm challenged, because even when we talk, we can have us language, and us is all of us, meaning when I talk about community, we talk about 3 different kinds of community. We talk about it starts here, taking care of each other's needs in this room, and then to the broader community, and then even to the abroad, right, to global. And it's messy, because it talks about this idea of sharing and breaking bread together and stuff like that. So it's so interesting, and I don't want to get too far off tangent, but when we talked about community, and I talked about diversity, and I talked about people from different ethnicities and of different color, no one has said a word to me since. Fascinating to me. And And I'm going to come back, Jojo wants to share, but do you need the mic or do you want to share from where? It's up to you. But that idea of diversity is something that's very, very important to us, and it can get very, very messy.
Well, I think I was going to address both the second question and the third, and I'm thinking back in those days, it was such a different society. It was an agrarian society. Everyone lived in smaller areas, so it was easier for them to get together. So what it looks like today is nothing like that, obviously. I mean, people are more spread out. I think because we live in a technological society, for example, instead of getting together at somebody's house to study the Bible or to do things, a lot of people, are online. They don't call people. They send emails. They're on Facebook. It's just not the same, I mean, the whole society has changed so drastically. But we have to find ways to do that, because there are a lot of people that are isolated, and there are a lot of things that keep you from being in a community. So I think, what it looks like today is just totally different, obviously, from what it looked like then. So
Yeah.
that's the challenge.
Yes,
obviously.
I totally agree. Sorry.
Us speaking.
Yeah, give it to Terry. He's the orator. You hit on some good points, because that's why we talked about being intentional. Because with the busyness of life, it will not happen unless we are intentional about it. And what does it mean to be intentional? What does it look like? Those are all the things that we have to figure out. I just wanted to share this with you because I thought this was so intriguing. So you said that they did have a different society back then, and they understood communal living, right, because of that. But in that, I thought we just go right by it when we hear these verses and go, oh, they just live in that kind of society, it must have been so easy, blah, 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 blah. And I'm sitting there going, well, let's just think about this. Most of them had like family type businesses, so let's just use fishing as one of them. And they do it differently. But now we got to come together and figure out, how do we share all of our possessions? But I'm lucrative. Look at my fishing business. This is how I do it, and look at how wealthy we are. Well, I do it over here. And you got to think, this was so messy for them to figure this out. My point is, they worked at it. They stayed long term to figure it out. What we do is, like I think to Chuck's point, we vote with our feet. And we're so independent and so filled with pride that when it doesn't go my way, when my feelings get hurt, when they do it differently than I do, when they look differently than I do, it's so easy to leave in our society. And we become insulated and isolated, right? So part of this is our own willingness to work through the messiness of life, because you believe this. Our Father, you believe that. And when we believe that, we got to be willing to fight for it. I thought this was interesting because I said, married just if you're married and you struggle with finances, like just because you both came from two different households and you look at money differently, and that's just two people trying to figure it out. And I know there's a lot of us that struggle with that. Now put 100 couples together, and they got to figure out how to share and meet the needs, right? We can't even do that in our own households with one other person. Think about the challenges of that. But they were willing to do whatever it took to be that kind of a community, a caring community, a loving community, a community that reached beyond itself. And then it said that they found the favor, and the Lord added to their number daily. But of course they would. If you can figure this out, I told you it's radical. I told you it was revolutionary. But if you can figure it out, it's so attractive, because that's what people ultimately want. They want to be accepted. They want to be loved. Good, Larry.
Two things. One is the historical time this was written, and then other times that it's been tried. In Virginia, the first settlers prior to 1620 tried a society like this and actually failed. And then in 1620, they actually started growing tobacco and selling it, and there was profit and all that, and that actually succeeded. So that was what we call today is the entrepreneurs came in. That because there were some people that were smarter than others at making money, and sharing it. That was in the 1620s when they started growing tobacco. But when you look at this society, they were used to one thing at one time. Remember, the Jews at this period, temple ran everything. They gave all their money to the temple, and they told them it was government run. Temple was a government. But then they had to learn to live as outside the government, which is a whole, Jesus threw a monkey wrench in the whole thing. Jesus was a great person, obviously, but he threw a monkey wrench into the whole process. So they are living like Jesus, saying, wait a second, he showed us a whole new way to live, sharing from our abundance. And where does the abundance come from? It comes from God.
Yeah.
So then they had the process, okay, we have the 10%, we know where that goes. That goes to God, temple, because temple's still up. It wasn't until the 70 AD that it actually collapsed, and that was God setting a punishment. But what happened is that they said, we got a system now. We can share because we can grow together, because we're going to have a spiritual growth with God. It's just amazing. I mean, he totally changed everything.
Right.
Because look, it's like, wait a second, there's the harlot. You still got to take care of her. You may disagree with her, you may think she's vile, but you got to take care of her. There's the beggar. You got to take care of that person, as well as take care of yourself. We're not saying don't grow your riches, but understand how you're going to use them in your life, your abundance, and not even money.
Right.
It's even more important than it. It's your life. You've got to share your life.
You know what happened last, I don't know, it was a couple of weeks ago, and I wanted to bring it up to go with what you're saying, because I do think that is revolutionary. I think it's messy. I think it challenges at a core of what we really believe. When we did the table with communion, and we made it into an offering, and we had people come through, and when they took the bread, those that were able to give and wanted to give put all their money out on the table. And that in itself, the picture of that was moving to me and humbling to me. And then when people went through it, and just so you know, I think there was like thousands of dollars on that table. And the next time we said, and we did it behind the curtain so that it was discreet, and we said, anyone in this room that has a need and would like to receive as an offering. So every person went and took the cup, and those that were in need received that. And by the end of the day, all that which was on the table was received. And you all met the needs of this community here. And I thought that was a beautiful thing. When I started talking about that to other people, like just, in my sphere, as I was at the gym, I was here and there, the first thing that I was told, what do you think? I don't know if anyone else had this experience. If you had these conversations, what is it?
They had to say, that's crazy.
It's crazy, but what else? What's the society filled with?
People said to me, church, they always want to take. And
Yep.
I said, not my church.
Well, that would be a positive
Right.
view of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Trust.
Generous.
Doubt.
You're on fire today. Skeptics.
Yeah.
They're like, people ripped you off. Several people, and some of them, quote unquote, were from other churches. The first thing they thought about was, don't you care that people ripped you off? I said, the thought never even crossed my mind. And I don't care if they did. Think about that. If someone did, someone did. That's between them and God. We are just to give, and if I need to receive, we're to receive. But I was like, that to me was like the news, right? What I watch on the news is exactly the messaging that I got back. It was a good thing that we did, and the news wanted to make it into garbage.
That's more the comment section of it.
Yes, right? They're scrolling in as we speak, right? Yeah, and I'm saying, you can't just do a good thing, right? And so this is the idea of changing the conversation that we talk about. And to transition into this morning, I'm going to go back to the first comment about the being busy. Because we're starting a new series that we're calling Simple Living. Because I agree, in order to have authentic community, we have to approach life completely different. Are we willing to? Will we look at ourselves and say, we're not going to get caught up in the rat race like everyone else does? Will we be countercultural? Because if we're willing to, we'll surprise ourselves and we'll learn things that we've never learned before. And we'll experience things at a much deeper level. So when I talked to you earlier about this idea of relationships, and when Mark's saying about having just that 1 hour, that one moment, this is what it's coming to. When I look at time, I'm looking time as our greatest resource. Before I go off, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I was kind of like, what I was thinking as you were talking was that, you know, we have a unique opportunity as a young church, a small church. If you kind of look at us, we see each other every week, and we're building those relationships. And a lot of us has known each other for a while. But when you talk about that Acts 2 church, a lot of larger churches wouldn't even have the opportunity to start that as their foundation, because their foundation has already began years and years ago. So for us, it's not only, the money aspect, that's there, part of giving. It's a great thing, but it's also about community, spending time together, getting to know each other, meeting each other's needs emotionally, physically, and just relationally, you know. And to have a foundation of people, and if, you know, we see each other every week, and a lot of us talk during the week and whatever it is, and a lot of us have been friends for many years, but how awesome is that to have the opportunity to take that to the next level and be revolutionary and be different and really grasp onto being an Acts 2 church. So for me, you know, I hear what you were saying about the historical of what's going on at that time, and then but really embracing it for our time and creating those relationships while we're still young enough and small enough to create that foundation that we really build upon that rock and go into the future. Now that, to me, that is revolutionary, and that is something I truly look forward to, and that if we were all challenged to do that, that to me is amazing. So, you know, that's just...
Thank you. No, it's good stuff. I think that you're capturing a lot of the essence of what we're striving to do. And so, in order to do that, we've got to figure out this thing called time. So, I'm going to go off on a more emotional approach to this, and then there's a very practical ending. Because what I want us to get is, I want us to leave here challenged in a heartfelt way to approach time, but knowing at the end of this, Diane's handing out index cards, so just everyone should have an index card. If you have a pen or you need a pen, we'll get those to you. But like as I'm talking, I want you to be thinking about what's the one thing in your life that you want to change, or that you have a dream, or you want to go after, or you want it to be different. All right, and I'm going to talk a lot about that. But what is it? And I want you to be thinking about it. What's that one area of your life that if you could do it differently, you would? And I'm going to talk a lot about what that could look like. But it starts with clarity. If time is our greatest resource, we need to figure out what's the most important thing that we have. What are the most important things in our lives so that we can prioritize well. I was putting, live out our purpose. What's your purpose? We talk a lot about that. Why are you here? God, you've been gifted. You've gone through experiences that no one else has gone through so that you can use those same experiences to help someone else in need now, if you're open to it. You have certain unique characteristics of who you are that God wants to use to bless other people. Will you show up? This living out God's mission to make the big changes in our lives, to inspire others. All right, so one of the things that my motto is, one life, live it. You'll see it on the website. One life, live it. I want you to think about that. Because day after day after day, it becomes a blur. We just keep going. Psalm 90, verse 12, Will, and we'll read it together. It's a simple one, and then we'll read also the next one too right after it. So ready? 1, 2, 3. Oh Lord,
Teach me the number of my days.
yeah, you have like my rhythm. Okay. Try to stay
Is
with
that the King James?
Right, ready? Oh Lord,
Make me know my end and what is the measure of my days. Let me know how fleeting I am.
all right, go back to the first one. May God add His blessing to the reading, hearing, and doing of the Word. Amen. You may be seated. think about, I love this verse. First of all, the word teach I love because it means that you can learn it. Teach us to number our days aright. That's the idea. There's a sense of urgency. There's a sense of, yeah, you can live any way you want. You can choose to do anything you want. You live in America. But how you choose and what you choose will determine how much influence, how much effect, how much impact you have in other people's lives. And what do you want to be remembered for? When you wake up every day, do you wake up and say, like, excited about, this is the thing. This is why I'm here. And if not, how can we fix that? Because it starts with having that vision of saying, God, you have me here for a reason. And if I can embrace that, and I can then look at the day and figure it out. And there was a thing that we talked, just how do I add value to someone else's life? People, you don't need to have any more purpose than that. Say today, how can I add value based on who I am? My personality, my gift set, my experiences. How can God use you to impact other people? Keep it simple. Keep it simple. And it says that I might gain a heart of wisdom. Because, like I said, we can live any which way we want, but is that wise? Are we living the wisest way? Or are we just getting pulled by the culture in all different directions? I feel like we're so scattered, right? This idea of focus is a lost art. Because we get pulled in so many different directions that we never really figure out that one thing that we're so good at, that if we focused on that, we would change people's lives. And then Psalm 39. Make me know my end, and what is the measure of my days. Let me know how fleeting I am. That's a perspective verse. Right? That's saying that sometimes, Chuck, just the opposite. I think we're so filled with pride, and we think we're so self-arrogant. Like we think we are, like the world revolves around us. So much so that everything we do is consumed with I and me. And God's trying to break us of that. And He's saying, you don't know the number of your days. So why do you act like it? Why do you presume on the future? What a great question. Now, I've been fortunate to go through an experience, and I want to share it to you. I usually just gloss over this. And I've recently met someone that had a similar situation. Meaning, if you've ever had a near-death experience, or you're in a car accident, or whatever that might be, where it's like your life flashed before your eyes, I hope that you woke up with a whole new perspective. And I want to share it to you because I just want to make this point, because you don't need to go through that in order to have it. But when I was 13 years old, think about when you're 13, like you just have all this energy, and you have the world, you have all your dreams, and you just, living life, and everything's great. And I loved playing sports, and I was really good at it, and I loved it, and it was my passion. And that day, I had played a hockey game, and then that night, I went out and I was golfing, and when I came home, I got nauseous. So I had a friend sleep over, we went to bed, and the next morning I went to stand up, and I fell back down. Thought that was odd. I went to stand up again, fell back down. And my friend, obviously was confused. We didn't know what was going on, and I just told him, I said, I just can't stand up. I don't know what's going on. And so he helped me up, and we went into my dad's, where he lived. But he wasn't there for the day. And so throughout that morning, the hours were passing, and it got to the point where I couldn't pick up a glass of milk. And obviously we're freaking out. We're calling, my friend's mom was a nurse and this and that. And it got to the point where my dad got home, we called emergency. They came and got me. And they brought me into Pawtucket Memorial. And I think by 5 o'clock that night, I was completely paralyzed and on a respirator. And I just want you to think, anyone in this room anyone in this room, that can happen to. Because why? We're not promised tomorrow. And I remember that first week, you know, with the respirator, the tube was in my mouth, so I couldn't communicate, I couldn't move, I only could move my left eye. And I remember how long the hours were. I didn't sleep. And you're just sitting there, laying down, looking at the ceiling for hours and hours and hours. Obviously, I was afraid. Didn't know what was going to happen. And I remember this one detail. It was very interesting because one of my childhood friends, his father was the doctor that put that had to incubate me. And he messed it up because he knew me. And he put in the wrong size tube. And he just felt so badly about it. And eventually they gave me a talking trig. That's why I have this scar. My existence became, can I move my head? Can I move my arms? Meaning, I'm just trying, it's not happening. But that was my everyday focus. Try to breathe on your own. Try to move your arms. Try to move your legs. Every day. What do you do when all your effort, there's no results? I'm telling you, it had to have been like 12 hours a day that I'm trying to move. And I'm not moving. For 2.5 months, day in and day out. And all you got is this to think about. It shapes everything that I do now. That one experience as a 13-year-old kid. Because I don't want to ever take things for granted. And I want to impart that to you because it's like when you wake up with a different sense of why you're here, you look at everything completely different. And everything that you have is a blessing. It's a gift. It's an opportunity. Even the bad. Even when life stinks and it doesn't go your way, you have a choice. And I want to encourage you. It's like, make a decision. Decide today what you want to be. What you want to do. There are no excuses. You can let life happen to you, or you can make life happen. It starts with a decision. But so many times we go, we'll get to it tomorrow. I'll work out tomorrow. I'll work on my marriage tomorrow. I'll get out of debt tomorrow. I'll reconcile that relationship tomorrow. And tomorrow never comes. We need to make a decision today. What do you want to do? What is your goal? Write it down. This is who I want to be. If your marriage is struggling right now, what are you doing that needs to change? I was talking to a couple the other day saying, you're doing this, and this. It's not working. Don't play victim. Make a decision. Do something different today. I was talking to Chuck the other day. He's like, he started something. He's like, I'm going to do, I don't even know, I'm butchering this, but they'll get the point. I'm going to do 40 days in a row, and I'm going to try to do one thing nice every day to my wife. That's a change. What will you do to make that change? You know, I was laughing because I have a gym membership. If you have the card, they don't use cards anymore, so just buying the membership card doesn't help you lose weight. You know, we can all open our wallets. Look at, I'm a member of this gym. Sorry. I wasn't even going to go there, Alan. Right? You can rub that thing all over your body, right? It's not going to work. You got to show up and you got to do it. Then I was going to be a little funny. You just stand on that treadmill until you press the button, you stop moving. It's not going to work. You need help financially. What have you been doing that's gotten you into the hole that you need to change to get out of the hole? We want to make it so difficult. Take one thing and say, I'm going to change this here and now today. And some of you say, you don't know my past. You don't know what I've been through. And you're right, maybe I don't. But I do know this. The Bible talks about what will you do today. You cannot change the past. But you can fully live in the moment, here and now, and take whatever you had in the past, the worst of all situations, and you can start fresh today. That's a promise. It's guaranteed. How many of us will leave here and actually do it? What's the one thing that you want to change? There's a story in the Bible that is absolutely incredible. And this story goes with this idea of, this gets me all the time, that we stop dreaming when we get to a certain age. Because life has happened to us enough to say, we got beat down, and we keep getting beaten down, and we stop to lose that there's still hope, that there's still a way. Marriage, of course, because, you know, I'm assessing my own life. I'm assessing Diane and me. And I was talking to a family member of mine. Whose wife has cancer. I want you to think about this. Some of you in here, it's too late, I get it. And you've been hurt and ripped apart, your heart's been ripped apart, I get it. If you're in a marriage right now and it's struggling, I want you to think about this. When I think about if my wife was dying of cancer, what would I do differently? I don't care what it takes. Yeah, this is an emotional plea. But if it will help get you to do something differently, I want to tug at you. I want you to look differently at what's going on in your lives. Because we're never meant to be victims. You are empowered to make the changes that you want to make. There's a story in the Bible in John 5, and it's about a story of Jesus and when he was living this in the world and traveling. And it's a story of an invalid at the pool of Bethesda. And I want you to get this. The pool of Bethesda was known by the pagans and the Jews that this was a pool of healing. And all the invalids and all the lame and all the people, they surrounded the pool. And there was this invalid who'd been an invalid for 38 years. And he'd show up, he'd be at the pool. He couldn't show up, he'd be at the pool. And Jesus shows up. Think about this. This guy's been there, waiting to be healed for 38 years. The first thing Jesus looks at him, he says, do you want to get well? I think that's like the dumbest question I've ever heard. Seriously, when you read it, do you think that? I know it's not. I was paralyzed for 2.5 months. If Jesus showed up and said, do you want to get well? Yeah, please, now. Right? 38 years. Isn't that an interesting question? But, look at how he answers. Sir, I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I am trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me. Stop there. Yes. Why?
Where's the community there? Everybody is just thinking about themselves. You're not thinking about anybody else. You're just thinking about your own pain and your own needs the whole time. You've got somebody right there. And you could both go in together, right?
I don't know how it worked, but it sounds good.
Either, but I mean, all those times, not a single person had compassion for somebody else who was in just as much need as they were. I don't know. It's impossible.
So it doesn't sound too compassionate for Jesus to show up and say, do you want to get well?
At least somebody asked something.
Why do you think he asked that question? Anyone?
It's funny because I'm studying this very verse this morning. I had to answer about 9 questions in my Bible study that I'm doing. I don't think the guy wanted to get well. He's been sick for 38 years. You were only saying 13, so he's over, probably not much over 38, if he is at all. So most of his life, this is all he's known. And even though it's not a good life, and a good life is on the other side, he doesn't want it because he's comfortable in what he knows, even though what he knows isn't good and there's something better. Especially when you contrast him to John 9, the blind man who had a lot of moxie. But anyways, there's such a difference between the two men. But I don't think he wanted to get well. Think about it. He gets up, he walks, get up, pick up your mat and walk. He's thinking, well, now what do I do? I earned a living being poor and begging. And now, how do I earn a living? And what do I do? This is a totally new life. And sometimes we're stuck in a pattern that's unhealthy. And it's not the best, but that's all we know, and we're not willing to take the risk to move out of the unhealthy into a new healthy, more Christ-like pattern because it's unknown, and we have to learn new skills and take new risks. And I think that man is very much like many of us today. We might not be literally, physically paralyzed, but we are emotionally and spiritually paralyzed.
Yes. Oh boy.
Now,
Yeah.
Oh boy.
now I'm all new.
Doug, go ahead.
I just think it, it defined him. That's who he was, and that was his identity. And by, Jesus asking him, do you want to be healed, or do you want to get better, it forced him to look outside of his identity, like to see himself as something different. Where for 38 years he was never, this is who he was, and he was stuck in it, and it was not going to be, it wasn't going to change. So that's who he was, and he accepted it, and it just became part of his life. And to be able to look outside of that and see yourself differently than how you are, I think you need to be challenged. That question was a challenge.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm going to keep going. All right. I love that. That is, those perspectives is exactly what I wanted you to get. And we have a system today, don't we? People have gotten used to the system, how to work the system. But also, all of us, I would suggest, we all can fall into this pattern. So I hope none of us dismiss ourselves, because we're all the invalid.
Amen.
You know what I'm saying? We've all been there. It doesn't have to be physical, like we said. And then look at Jesus' response, because we all often look at Jesus and think he was like this kind, compassionate, loving guy who's just going to come over there. I feel like it's like he almost took the guy by the collar and said, "Get up! Seriously, get up! How many times are you going to do this? Every day for 38 years? When are you going to get up? Church, when are you going to get up? How long will it be? What do you need Jesus to do? Do you need him to grab you and shake you and say, stop? Get up, pick up your mat and walk. Live. Get up. You know what that stands for? You know what he's introducing right here? Back to Chuck's whole thing about missional living. He's introducing a new kingdom with resurrection power. He's pointing to the resurrection. Say, I've come to bring new life. I've come to bring new creation. I'm bringing heaven to earth. Will you get up? And he's saying that to us today. You're not a victim. Stop complaining about no one else is pushing you in the pool. Well, who are we blaming in our lives? Where are we casting the blame? Get up. It's not too late. But guess what? Yeah, it's going to be scary. It's going to be hard. It's going to be messy. You're going to need people around you to love you through it. That's why I talked about community. You probably can't do it on your own. But when are you going to get up and stop making excuses? Jesus wants us to have life. Do you see it? He's willing to do anything. He's willing to die on a cross. He's willing to take our place so that we can live life to the fullest. Do you want to get well today?
Yes.
My marriage is falling apart. My finances are falling apart. My health is falling apart. I'm no longer dreaming. What will we do about it? Time is ticking. I think I heard that song. The other part of this is that Jesus wants to put things back to right, the way that they were intended to be. All of us in this room, God has an intention for our lives. His intention for this lame man was not to sit by a pool living off the system, playing victim. That's not what he was intended for. So all of you were intended for so much more. But it starts with a decision. Will you choose to get up? Will you choose to do it differently? So on your index cards, what is it that needs to change? When you look at yourselves and you look at your life, what do you want to see different? I encourage you to write it down. And then write down the obstacles, because there's going to be many. We don't just stay by the poolside just because. In those first months, in those first years, I'm sure it was a lot different than the years 30 to 38. Right? Because sooner or later, we just go in. We just give up. What are the obstacles that you will face in order to attain your goal? And then focus by stop doing some of the good things and start focusing on the best things. If you can make these changes. So assess it, list the obstacles, focus, do the best things, and then you got to do it though. You've got to put it into action. In Galatians 6:9, I'll leave you with this verse. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. No matter what we've been through, we are never, ever disqualified. Will we stand up? Let's pray. Lord, help us to conquer the fear. Help us to get unstuck from the past. Help us to embrace today. Help us to have the courage to say yes, to make a decision, to stand up and receive the new life, the new promises, so that we can be the people that you've intended us to be, and that we can go and make a difference in other people's lives. Help us to do that.